Max Finday runs the Canadian Roots Exchange, which helps foster reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth. He joins me now from Toronto. Hi, Max.
Hi there.
Well, the verdict in the Tina Fontaine case came only about 2 weeks after that not guilty verdict in the Gerald Stanley trial, who of course was accused of second-degree murder in the death of Colton Boushie. How are these verdicts, especially because they're happening so close together, affecting the young people you work with?
Well, I think young people across this country felt a profound sense of disappointment, a profound sense of sadness after these verdicts came in. Canada has shown twice in as many weeks that the lives of Indigenous young people are not valued at the same rate as other Canadians.
Well, we are in a digital age as well, so these cases have led to a firestorm on social media. How do you think those comments that are appearing on these stories will affect other young Indigenous people?
Well, I think what's most shocking about the aftermath of these cases is that we've seen Canadians from coast to coast, from cities and small towns, putting their name, putting their faces next to comments that are extremely racist, that are filled with prejudice. It's a wake-up call, I think, to all Canadians that racism isn't this boogeyman on the internet, this nameless or faceless individual, but it's your neighbor. It's the person that you're beside at the grocery store. It's your colleagues, it's your friends, it's your family. And I think a lesson to all Canadians is that it's incumbent upon them to have these hard conversations with their friends and neighbors, with their colleagues, that Canada isn't this great place of justice and fairness and equality that we grew up thinking it was, that Indigenous people, Indigenous young people are crying out for reforms, are crying out to be invited to the table, are crying out for justice, crying out to be that country that we think we can be.
Well, in terms, you mentioned justice, many are saying that there needs to be a change in our justice system to better represent First Nations. How do you respond to that?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a legal degree. I think it's clear that systems and institutions throughout Canada are prejudiced against Indigenous people, have purposefully left out Indigenous people, have done real harm to Indigenous communities. I think it's fair for Indigenous people across this country, particularly young people, to question how we can be served by these institutions when they leave out our participation and our voices.
What do you think it will take to better that relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth?
Well, I think, Canada has to recognize that reconciliation is earned. In our rush for reconciliation, we have truly trampled over truth. We've forgotten to discuss these hard parts that are historical in nature, but also continue today. We need to have these hard conversations about how we're not done nation building yet, how Canada is going to require changes to institutions, to systems, to better include Indigenous people, to make sure that we have that sense of justice, to make sure that we can be included in meaningful ways, to ensure that young people have that hope that Canada will come back as that respectful treaty partner that we all want to see.
And you speak of hope. If you could give young Indigenous people one takeaway from all of this, what would you say to them?
Well, I think it's important for all of us to say, and I say to each and every young Indigenous person watching today, that you are loved, you are valued, and you come from people who are proud. We don't see that reflected in these last weeks. We have seen injustices, but it's important for young Indigenous people to keep fighting, to keep hoping, and to keep progressing for change so that we can see justice.
And what about non-Indigenous youth? Do you have something that you'd like to say to them as well?
Well, non-Indigenous young people statistically are the most hopeful that meaningful reconciliation will occur in their lifetime. I invite non-Indigenous young people, whether you're a first-generation Canadian or a fifth-generation Canadian, to listen, to reflect on the ways in which your neighbors, your peers, Indigenous young people, have been left out of this country. And add your voice for justice. Add your voice when you're talking to elected officials, when you're talking to your mom and dad, your auntie and uncle. We have incredible power as young people to mobilize our communities online or in the streets. And it's the role and responsibility of each of us to be able to do that.
Thank you so much for this, Max.
Thank you.